Right now, a single choke point controls the fate of the global economy. If you look at a map, international trade looks like a robust, unstoppable machine. We are conditioned to believe that the global supply chain is vast, that it is decentralized, that it is resilient enough to withstand almost any geopolitical shock. But this is a carefully constructed illusion. Think about this for a second. The modern economy does not rely on a redundant web of safe passages. It relies on an incredibly thin, fragile thread. And right now, that thread is about to snap. 20% of the world's oil moves through one narrow strip of water, the Strait of Hormuz. At its narrowest point, the shipping lanes are just 2 miles wide in either direction. It is a geographical anomaly, a catastrophic bottleneck that dictates the price of everything, from the gas in your car to the food on your table. And it is a ticking time bomb. You do not crash the global economy overnight, but you can easily trigger a chain reaction that no one can stop. Every single day, over 20 million barrels of oil pass through this exact corridor, along with massive, vital quantities of liquefied natural gas. This is not just fuel for cars. It is the lifeblood of the entire industrial world. Asian manufacturing empires, European energy grids, and American logistics networks all depend on the uninterrupted flow of these ships. There are no alternative pipelines large enough to replace this volume. There are no secondary, safer shipping routes through the Middle East. The door is either open or the door is closed. This is where everything breaks. If this door closes, the lights of the global economy go out. Right now, this specific corridor is surrounded by the most heavily armed and politically volatile territory on the planet. Tensions have officially reached a boiling point. The threat of a military blockade, the deployment of naval mines, or targeted drone strikes on commercial vessels is no longer a hypothetical scenario. It is highly probable. If this stops, global trade doesn't slow down. It breaks. Oil prices do not just slowly rise, they explode. But the immediate global crisis will not actually be triggered by the military. It will be triggered by guys in suits, by the insurance companies. In the maritime shipping industry, underwriters in London dictate where the global fleet can and cannot go. When a geopolitical flashpoint ignites, the Joint War Committee steps in. They declare the area a high-risk war zone. When this happens, maritime war risk premiums multiply overnight. The cost to insure a single commercial supertanker carrying $100 million of crude oil surges violently. It can jump by hundreds of thousands of dollars for a single multi-day voyage. If the military risk becomes too high, coverage is not just expensive, it is pulled completely. And in the shipping world, the rule is absolute. No insurance, no ships, no captain, and no corporate board will risk a massive vessel and its cargo without financial protection. The ships simply stop moving. When they stop, the global fleet is forced into the only remaining alternative. They have to completely abandon the Middle East shortcuts. They must reroute the massive supertankers around the entire continent of Africa, sailing past the Cape of Good Hope. This detour adds thousands of nautical miles to the journey. It extends delivery times by 3 to 4 weeks. It forces these massive ships to burn millions of gallons of extra fuel just to make the trip. The mathematical efficiency of global trade collapses instantly. No ships, no fuel, no economy. But here's where it gets even worse. This is not an economic slowdown. This is a systemic freeze, and you have to understand exactly how this freeze infects your daily life. We live in an era of just-in-time logistics. Warehouses do not hold 6 months of inventory anymore. They hold weeks, sometimes days. When the shipping lanes freeze, the shelves empty faster than the system can restock them. The catastrophic cost of this rerouting is never absorbed by the massive shipping conglomerates. They do not take the loss. The cost is passed directly down to the consumer. It is passed down to you. The cost of energy infects every single layer of human production. Agriculture becomes drastically more expensive. Modern farming requires petroleum-based fertilizers to grow the crops and diesel-powered machinery to harvest them. When fuel prices double, the cost to produce a single loaf of bread or a gallon of milk doubles with it. Manufacturing costs skyrocket. Transportation and logistics become a premium luxury service. Inflation, which central banks have spent years and trillions of dollars trying to contain, would explode. We would see a violence in prices we have rarely witnessed in modern history. The Federal Reserve can print infinite amounts of money, but they cannot print oil. They cannot print cargo ships. The purchasing power of the middle class would evaporate in real time. Here is the part nobody tells you on the evening news, while the public watches the terrifying headlines. While ordinary people worry about their skyrocketing grocery bills and empty savings accounts, institutional money is already repositioning. This brings us to the most important rule of the global financial system. Wall Street does not panic. Wall Street calculates. When the drums of war start beating in the Middle East, retail investors feel fear. They watch the news, they panic sell their retirement accounts, and they prepare for the worst. But hedge funds, massive asset managers, and corporate insiders feel opportunity. They know that in times of extreme geopolitical stress, capital always seeks a safe harbor. And they know exactly how to front-run the public panic. Look at the commodity markets. Look at gold. Gold is not just rising because of arbitrary market trends. It is signaling fear at a global scale. When massive amounts of capital flee the uncertainty of the stock market, they run to the oldest safe haven in human history. Institutions are quietly accumulating massive reserves of precious metals. They are protecting their purchasing power before the catastrophic inflation shock hits the broader economy. But they are not just playing defense. They are playing offense. They are quietly pumping billions of dollars into the defense sector. Companies like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon Technologies, General Dynamics, Northrop Grumman. These corporations are the architects of modern warfare. They build the missile defense batteries. They design the combat systems. They manufacture the precision-guided munitions that fill the arsenals of major military powers. These corporations do not need a full-scale, devastating world war to generate record profits. They only need the threat of war. They need the tension. When global stability fractures, defense budgets increase across the entire planet. Governments panic. Politicians draft massive emergency budgets to project power and security. Taxpayers fund these multi-billion-dollar defense contracts. And the profits flow directly, uninterrupted, into the hands of the shareholders. This is the ultimate asymmetric trade in the history of finance. Listen closely to the math of this positioning. If the Strait of Hormuz remains open and the crisis is averted, the defense companies still win. They win massive long-term contracts because the fear has already been established in the minds of the public and the politicians. But if the strait actually closes, if the missiles actually fly, their valuations skyrocket as the conflict escalates and their weapons are rapidly deployed and depleted. Either way, institutional money wins. The house always wins. This reveals the absolute darkest reality of modern capitalism. It is a system built on a very specific set of rules, a system that actually thrives on volatility, chaos, and destruction. As long as you are on the right side of the trade, in every major global crisis, the mechanics of wealth transfer remain exactly the same. Whether it is a global pandemic, a housing market meltdown, or a geopolitical conflict in the Middle East, the risks and the losses are always socialized. The public absorbs the inflation. The middle class pays the higher energy bills. Ordinary people lose their purchasing power as their currency devalues to print the money needed to fund government interventions. The working class loses their jobs when the supply chain fractures and companies cut costs to survive. But the profits? The profits are always, without exception, privatized. They are captured by the institutions that knew exactly where to place their capital before the crisis hit the mainstream news. They are captured by the defense contractors securing emergency funding, by the massive energy conglomerates selling oil at an insane premium, by the hedge funds that short the vulnerable retail sectors while riding the massive surge in safe haven assets. The Strait of Hormuz is not just a geographical choke point, it is a financial choke point. It is a highly efficient mechanism for extracting wealth from the bottom of society and transferring it directly to the top. Some would argue that the system is broken. But if you look closely at the wealth transfer over the last 2 decades, some would argue the system is working exactly as it was designed to work. It is a machine that perfectly converts public fear into private equity. The media will keep your eyes fixed on the warships. They will focus your attention on the political speeches, the United Nations debates, and the diplomatic negotiations. They will debate who is morally right And who is morally wrong? They will keep the public divided, angry, and distracted by the theater of global politics. But the real war is not being fought over ideology. It is being fought over capital. The next time you see oil prices violently spike, the next time you hear about military escalations in the Middle East, do not just look at the terrifying headlines. Look at the money. Look at who is quietly buying the panic while the rest of the world is selling in fear. Because while 99% of the world is preparing for a crisis, a very small, very quiet group of people is preparing for a massive payout. And until the public understands how this game is actually played, the greatest wealth transfer in human history will simply continue, hidden in plain sight. So the real question is, when the next crisis hits and the lights go out, which side of the trade are you on? Because in the end, it all comes back to one place, that narrow strip of water.